First light reveals a field strewn with discarded shields, carved with an individual woman's braid, some stained with red. A solitary shield maiden stands on a rocky promontory, her cloak billows, sword raised in silent defiance. Imagine waking each dawn to sharpened steel, braided hair crowned with iron, and the ever-present knowledge, by nightfall, you might lie bleeding or rise singing victory. Close up on a calloused hand, weaving leather thongs through a shield-rim signature braid draped nearby. Her gauntlet presses steel rings into position. A deep drumbeat pulses like a heartbeat, metal underhand, faint resonance of distant horns. Tonight, we enter her world where honor, survival, and fury fused into a life few could endure. The longhouse door creaked open under the weight of frost. Solveig, the shield maiden, stepped out into the frozen morning, her breath curling upward in silver spirals. Her cheeks burned from the cold as her boots crunched into the hardened earth. Above, ravens wheeled in the pale light, their wings slicing silently across the sky. Behind her, the glow of embers still flickered inside the hearth, but she walked away from its warmth without hesitation. She did not rise to cook, nor to tend fire. She rose because war demanded readiness. Her blade had slept beside her. Her shield had waited by the door. Now they were one with her. 6 women stood already in formation, arrayed like a crescent moon of iron. Each face was painted in ash and bloodstone powder, symbols of clans, scars, and sisters lost. Their eyes met hers in solemn greeting. No smiles, no nods, just shared breath in the icy morning. Solveig stepped into their line, locking her round shield into place. The boss of it was cold against her palm, but familiar. Next to her, Helga the Berserker struck a training dummy with brutal force. Sparks flew as her blade met the iron rim again and again. The wind changed. A war horn split the silence, the primal sound of challenge echoing across the fjord. Every heart quickened. Solveig lifted her sword in silent salute. Helga turned to meet her. Without words, they collided. Shield met shield with a thunderclap. Boots tore up frozen mud. Blades danced and crashed with a violence too precise to be wild. Around them, the others watched, not cheering, not interrupting. This was a rite. No duel was for sport. Every strike tested not only strength but spirit, precision, and the will to rise again. Solveig gritted her teeth, deflected a blow, and drove forward. Echoes of steel rang through the morning air, followed by silence. Their story had begun. A woman hauls herself over the wall of a military obstacle course. Her muscles flex under moisture-wicking fabric. A stopwatch ticks nearby. Medics stand at the ready. She drops down, exhales, and waits for the next command. Half a world and a millennium away, a Viking woman slams her shield into a wooden target. Her hand is raw, her breath mists in the cold. She doesn't pause. The only clock is the sun's slow rise. There are no medics, only sisters watching to see if she bleeds or breaks. One trains for certification, the other trains for survival. Failure in one means a retake. Failure in the other ends in burial. On one field, mats cushion every fall. On the other, blood spatters frost-bitten earth. Steel doesn't forgive. A modern warrior tightens the straps of carbon fiber armor. Inside it, impact gel, tested in labs. Meanwhile, Solveig pulls stained leather across bruised ribs. Her jerkin is handmade, stinking of sweat and last night's iron. There is no impact dispersion, just hope the hide holds. Today, armor is fabricated from polymers. Back then, it was stitched, tanned, or stolen. If you wanted protection, you made it, or took it tanned. Even then, it wasn't much. Nothing cushioned a ribcage from a wrong move. A drill instructor shouts numbers, counting out circuits. An athlete checks her heart rate monitor, waiting for the next set. On the other side of time, a Viking matron points at a stump and says, "If your axe misses, it'll be your neck next time." The lesson ends when the lesson is learned or not survived. Modern regiments build strength in predictable intervals. Shieldmaidens trained with no rest days. They drilled beneath the shadow of hunger, exile, vengeance. Nothing about their preparation was orderly. The only metrics were survival and reputation. A woman drinks a protein shake after sparring. Her recovery tracked by an app. She scrolls through stats. At a frozen stream, Salvig washes blood from her tunic. There is no recovery protocol, just herbs, ale, and the simple fortune of not being cut too deep. Modern warriors build their grit in controlled environments. Data, diet, and downtime. Shieldmaidens earned theirs in chaos. They fought within clan tensions. Winter starvation, sudden raids, betrayals whispered behind hearth walls. There were no buffers, no safety nets, only the question, will your name be remembered? Salvig stands watch while her kin sleep. Her sword is still in hand. Her eyes do not close. She listens for the wind, the snap of a branch, the creak of fate moving in the dark. Stones stand weathered along windswept ridges, carved with names like Ingard the Fearless. In faded Frankish manuscripts, lines record raiding bands of women who fought like wolves, merciless and precise. These were not myths. They were named. They were feared. They stood in the shield wall, bloodied but unbowed. In ancient burial mounds, weapons outnumber beads. Swords lie beside skeletons with wide clavicles, healed fractures, and calloused joints. These women were not buried as brides or mothers. They were buried as warriors. In training yards lit by torchlight, girls clash with blunted axes. Elders circle them, correcting stance, chanting the old war songs. By 10, they could skin a deer, wield a blade, and memorize battle sequences like hymns. By 15, some had already led raids on coastal settlements. Combat wasn't a choice. It was inheritance tattooed into muscle, chanted into memory, braided into every strand of hair. Their skeletons carry the proof. Worn knees from crouching in battle stance. Fractured forearms, healed at angles that speak of repeated defense. These weren't lucky strikes, they were trained responses, honed under pressure and pain. And yet, they were more than warriors. Their braids marked them, each strand a code, each twist dyed with clan colors and soot. Their helmets bore crests, not for flair but for memory. A brother avenged, a sister lost, a village defended. Their armor whispered stories of lineage, loss, and unbroken oaths. When they stepped into the shield wall, it wasn't just to survive. It was to prove their place, to carve it into the saga, to become more than mortal. They bled for kin, for name, for story. They fought to be remembered. This was no legend spun by poets. It was a crucible, a fusion of iron and ceremony, sweat and saga, rank and ritual. A shieldmaiden's life was not given. It was earned, one scar at a time. Brace yourself for a path of fire, blood, and loyalty where every sister in arms was comrade, challenger, protector, and the final line between home and annihilation. In the still peat bogs of Denmark, a woman was laid to rest, not with flowers, but with an iron axe. Her chainmail, blackened by centuries, clings to her remains like fossilized skin. This was no ceremonial offering. This was a warrior given her due. Her jaw set in death, her axe still beside her hip, she lies in silent testimony to a truth often denied. She was buried as she lived, armed, armored, and unafraid. Experts carefully brushed dirt from male links, while the camera glides across her ribs and rust-stained pelvis. Dr. Helena Prescott, military archaeologist, explains. Her grave says everything. Armor, weapons, no household tools. This was a frontliner. Not myth, not symbol, warrior. There is no crown here. Only the iron badge of survival. Runny stones rise in grey Nordic fields, setched with serpents, spears, and women beside them. Phratis the bold, Asa the sea-blade, their names carve a new narrative into stone. These are not literary fantasies, these are clan memorials. Visuals alternate between moss-covered runes and illuminated saga manuscripts. A stone shows a woman holding an axe above a shield wall, her braid long and defiant. Sagas speak of Herva, who demanded her inheritance by sword, then led men into fire and fury. Professor Simon Carver remarks, these inscriptions are pride claims. They weren't written to inspire, they were written to remember. They show a culture where women weren't just at the hearth, they were on the prow. This is more than imagery. It is historical graffiti from a people unwilling to forget who fought beside them. In 922 AD, Arab envoy Ahmad ibn Fadlan wrote of a funeral, a Rus warrior's death, his ship, and among his mourners, a woman armed and honored. She was ritually cleansed, then burned with sword and shield. She died not in fear, but in combat. Visuals fade between Arabic script, translation overlay, and recreations of women standing in solemn funerary rites. Narration draws on the contrast. The Vikings didn't write much down, but others didn't. What they saw was unforgettable. Fadlan's account is corroborated by burial remains. Female skeletons with sword calluses and trauma patterns matching blade wounds. Her death was public, her honors undeniable, her presence historic. Bones don't lie. CT scans from Burka and Wurzburg reveal consistent stress markers on female skeletons. Thickened wrists, flared deltoids, worn knee sockets. These are the markers of warriors, not farmhands. Shield practice, says Dr. Carver, is physically distinct. You see it in bone build-up, shield lifting, bracing for impact, axe swings. These women didn't inherit this, they earned it. Side-by-side comparisons show female warrior remains exhibiting similar signs as male combatants. Injury locations, left forearm fractures, collarbone breaks, healed leg cuts, match the kinds of trauma expected from blade combat and shield defense. We scan deeper into marrow and muscle fractures. These women trained, fought, healed, and trained again. The body became recorded in repetition, preserved in calcium. Excavated graves, once assumed male, now turn out female. DNA tests confirming sex, but the grave goods never lied. Swords placed at the right hip, shields beside the ribs, arrowheads at the feet. One grave even featured 3 axes, and no combs, no beads. Prescott explains, weaponry wasn't a fluke. These weren't exceptions, they were a pattern. Women buried as warriors, not wives. Jewelry is scarce in these graves. What dominates is iron. Artifacts once dismissed as ritual are now being reclassified, functional blades, not symbols. Visuals pan across axe heads, hilts, and bronze fittings cleaned from excavation pits. These graves aren't ambiguous. They're direct testimony from a time that buried its warriors with the tools they earned. Herva stands on a windswept hill, sword hovelled in hand, her men silent behind her. Saga scrolls narrate her speech. She wasn't decoration, she was commander. In the Herva saga, she confronts spirits, summons arms from graves, and commands ships into battle. The saga isn't just myth, it reflects memory stories passed to remind descendants who they came from. Visuals transition from hand-drawn saga panels to live-action dramatization. Cultural historian Dr. Adis Noal notes, oral tradition often preserved truths the scribes ignored. Herva's command was legendary, but legends often start with a life lived loud. Herva wasn't a side character. She was the headline. CT scans reveal rib fractures healed unevenly, clavicles once shattered, then reset. A femur wrapped in iron pins, rudimentary surgery. The bodies show not only trauma, but survival. Herbal residue found in burial jars suggests pain management, mugwort, willow bark. One skeleton had multiple fractures, all healed, meaning she returned to life and, possibly, battle after serious injury. Dr. Carver, you don't get this from falling in the fields. You get this from being struck, bracing, bleeding and staying alive. Medical intervention without modern tools meant resilience, knowledge, and risk. They stitched wounds and healed bones as best they could because the next raid wouldn't wait. In the final moments of this section, we see Selvig not as bone, but as flesh. A digital render reconstructs her frame from osteodata, muscle mass, battle stance, sword position. Her braid returns, her shield rises. She steps into a recreated Viking camp, firelight flickering off chainmail. Narration: the peat preserved her bones, but the evidence preserved her truth. Selvig lived, trained, fought, and died, but today she walks again, not in myth, but in memory made visible. Closing words from Dr. Prescott: when I look at her digital form, I don't see fiction. I see a woman who carried steel in her hands and a clan on her back. She doesn't need to speak. Her bones already did. Solitary dawn over the Viking shoreline. Selvig, veteran shieldmaiden, sits beneath low wooden beams. She braids Helga's hair into thick battle Nazi loop woven with rune-inscribed intent. The braid patterns are not style, they are invocation. Each one speaks, for peace, for vengeance, for unbreakable will. Kara crouches at the longhouse threshold, listening to surf and scanning the grey tide. They whisper old chants, their breaths curling in the cold. The glow of a single torch glimmers on polished bone beads. Salt hangs in the air, merging with the hiss of seawater. These are not idle moments. These are hours of focus and fusion, steel woven before steel is drawn. A braid is not just adornment, it is scripture. A shieldmaiden's braid tells of her clan, her scars, her bond to those beside her. To braid another is to bind with her. Kara walks barefoot into the surf, eyes narrowing against the salt-stung wind. Her cloak flutters like a crow's wing. Out beyond the low waves, sails breach the light dark shapes rising like ill omens. She kneels, one hand to the cold sand, the other shading her gaze. Saxons, 5 ships, full crew. She returns with urgency, but not fear. She steps onto the timber ramp, dripping seawater with each stride. Her voice is low, even. They come. No shouting, no chaos. Just a nod from Selvig. Shields are reached for. Helga spits into the fire and sharpens her blade with a slow smile. Scouts did not scream warnings. Their duty was observation, not alarm. In their silence lay the difference between panic and preparation. On the muddy shoreline, the women line up. Selvig calls cadence. Shields lock. Feet dig in. Helga steps forward and drives her axe into a split oak post once, twice, until it cracks clean through. A hush follows, broken only by the rhythmic ring of axe on shield. Each clash is a breath. Each clash a memory. They chant names of ancestresses, with each step Sigrid, Phratis, Herva. Their voices rise and fall with the cadence of steel. The salt air coats their skin. Leather armor dampens with sweat and sea spray. Mud spatters up legs, but no one flinches. This is not punishment. It is preparation. This is their meditation. Bloodless combat that hones the soul for when it must not be. Practice is sacred. Practice is survival. The tide recedes, revealing slimy fronds of kelp and bladderwrack. Kara picks through the slick marsh edge, gathering nutrient-rich seaweed. Solveig and Helga work beside her, stuffing fronds into woven baskets. Gudrun moves slowly, stopping to collect yarrow, nettle, and purple loosestrife, tucking them into her belt. Back at camp, Gudrun lights a fire and places a blackened kettle above it. She adds crushed barley, seaweed, and medicinal roots. As it simmers, it releases a sharp, earthy scent like forest rain over brine. This is their energy drink, their electrolyte brew made from marsh, not market. Their nourishment was local, tactical, sacred. No powders, no pills, just nature, fire, and centuries of shared knowledge. Gudrun works in silence. Her fingers mash yarrow into a pulp, adding fish oil and ash from last night's hearth. The salve is dark, slick, and smells of earth and blood. She lays out strips of linen, douses them in the mixture, and rolls them tight. Nearby, she cuts driftwood into splints with a bone knife. A boy hobbles in his foot, crushed in training. She examines it, nods, and begins to bind. There are no screams, only grit. The pain is part of the ritual. As she wraps, she hums an old tune her mother once sang over a fever. Her herbs are not decoration. They are doctrine. Every root chosen, every ash pinch weighed in muscle and memory. Gudrun's role is not second to battle, it is equal. Where steel opens wounds, she weaves them shut. The alarm is not shouted, it rises in the throat like a storm. Kara's signal, 2 fingers raised. Saxon longships breach the surf, hulls scraping onto sand with cruel intent. The enemy disembarks, fast shields up, blades drawn. Solveig doesn't wait. She steps into the tide, water up to her knees, shield at the ready. The wall forms behind her tight, breathing as one. Helga bellows her fury, a sound older than language. Kara is already at the rear, bow raised. Her first arrow splits a commander's throat before his feet hit shore. The enemy falters, morale already cracking beneath the roar of women who have nothing left to prove, only to defend. This isn't strategy. This is instinct. Seafoam churns red as steel finds flesh. The tide turns not with water but with will. Solveig's shield slams into an enemy's with a dull thud. The sound of 2 wills colliding. She pushes, pivots, and strikes low. Bone cracks. Behind her, Helga barrels through to men like a boar through thickets, a axe singing its sharp song. The beach is mud, blood, salt, and breath. Chaos reigns, but the Shieldmaidens move like a single creature, reading each other's rhythm, covering gaps without a word. Steel shrieks on shield rims. Kara's arrows whistle through fog. One lands, one misses, one pierces a throat mid-chant. The man's song ends in salt water. Fear evaporates. Only purpose remains. There is no victory chant. There is only the next heartbeat, the next breath, the next opponent. To survive is to return. To return is to remember. The battle is over, but its cost echoes. Blood soaks the sand. Limbs are carried on makeshift stretchers of split shields. Gudrun moves among the wounded, face still, fingers steady. She splints a broken leg with driftwood. She whispers to a dying girl, "Your name will be sung." Solveig kneels beside a boy, no older than 12, whose arm is split to the bone. She places a wolf pelt over him, murmuring a protection rune into the fur. Barley stew simmers over the fire, thick with herbs and smoked fish. Those who can eat, those who can't, are fed by hand. No feasting, no laughter, just the slow, necessary act of rebuilding flesh, spirit, and memory. Some will not see morning, but none will pass unremembered. Darkness settles. The women gather around the embers, faces lit by flickering flame. Silence is first, then words come soft, reverent. Salvig tells of her sister, fallen at Gotland. Kara speaks of a vow sworn in a river cave. Helga offers a rare tale not of herself, but of the woman who once taught her to swing an axe. Each story is an offering, each voice a thread in a tapestry of memory. No one interrupts, no one embellishes. Truth is sacred here. What's said in the circle stays within it, bound by blood, smoke, and ash. These are not bedtime stories. These are war songs for the soul. Two women climb wooden ladders to take their post atop the outer towers. Below, the rest settle into pelts spread across upper-tier benches. The fire is low, but still gives warmth. Gudrun checks one last wound. Kara sharpens an arrowhead by touch alone. Salvig stands by the doorway. She whispers a rune blessing over the resting two lines across the brow, one over the chest. A ritual passed down in silence. Waves lap the shoreline. An owl cries once. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snaps. This is the hour of watching, not sleeping. In peace, they guard peace. In peace, they prepare for war. Wind howls against the tower rafters. The night watch swaps out silently, no need for orders. The rhythm is lived. Beneath them, the longhouse hums with breath and dream. Solveig doesn't sleep. She sits by the coals, hands resting on her blade. Her rune bracelet glints with every flicker. She remembers each mark. One for a friend, one for a battle, one for a choice never spoken aloud. The silence is not empty. It's full with memory, with presence, with the steady heartbeat of a people still here. They are never truly off guard. Even in rest, the spirit stands sentinel. Solveig wakes before the sun. Or maybe she never slept. She climbs the earthen embankment behind the long. Her eyes search the grey edge of the world where water kisses sky. First light cracks the sea. She tightens her belt, brushes hair from her eyes, and grips her shield not in fear, but in ritual. Each morning begins like this. Not because she expects an attack, but because one day there will be. Below, her sisters stir. A cough, a stretch, the scrape of wool across wood. But Solveig remains, still watching, not just for danger, but for hope. Every dawn is a gift and a question. Will today demand steel? She will be ready either way. A ring of shieldmaidens stands close to a roaring fire. The flame reflects in their eyes, flickers across ash-painted cheeks, and dances on the metal clasps woven into their braids. They chant names, some of ancestors, others of those freshly fallen. This is no song. It's a pact. Ash and soot cling to sweat-slicked brows as the circle tightens. In silence, they lower their shields until rims touch the ground, an act of reverence, not surrender. They do not fear death, only disloyalty. Their faces glow in rhythm with the fire. A breath, a beat, a bond. They fought for clan, for honor, for Valhalla, but first they bound themselves together in flamelit ritual. This circle is both prayer and vow. Loyalty forged here is stronger than any oath shouted in daylight. To shieldmaidens spar with intensity. Mud spatters their boots as they step and strike. One stumbles back, not far, but enough. The fire chant behind them shifts pitch. No insults, just silence. The girl steadies, reclaims her stance. Flight isn't measured in miles. One step too far can write your shame into saga. In their world, flight was ruin, a stain carried into sagas. Standing firm was not just survival, it was immortality. Fear was understood, but it had to be faced, shared, transformed. Every warrior knew, if you fled the shield wall, you didn't return home. Your name didn't pass lips. You became unspoken. To fall was honorable. To flinch was final. A young shield maiden steps away from sparring, heart hammering in her ears, blood real this time glistens on her blade. Her target lies still, she doesn't smile. Senior warriors approach. One draws a notch into her sword with a stone blade. Another lifts a braid from her shoulder and dips the tip into a bowl, a mix of ash, blood, and elder tincture. First blood marked adulthood. The notch and blood-dyed braid proclaimed existence beyond fear. The girl bows her head. She's no longer training. She's part of the wall. The ceremony is brief, solemn. There are no cheers, just a nod. Recognition, a small place carved into legacy. Steam coils inside the bathhole. Shield maidens form a silent circle, bare skin slick with sweat, steam rising like ghosts around them. Each voice speaks once. A vow, a name, a promise. Runes are drawn on misty stone with bare fingers. They swore their lives to the sister beside them. Sweat-shrouded vows became bonds enforced by breath and steam. One breathes, I guard your back. Another, I avenge you if you fall. No helmets, no shields, only nakedness, truth, and trust. In this room, there is no rank, no fear, just women swearing to be more than blood could bind. Helga grips her axe tightly, her eyes dimlit, unfocused, but elsewhere. She steps into a rhythm not of her own making. A shield beats in time with her breath, then another, then a third. In battle, the line between fear and fury blurred. Fear was the signal. Fury was the response. Flow state became armor. Her motions lose edgesage, strike fluid, inevitable. Sweat pours down her arms like warpaint. This isn't madness. This is mastery. The trance, the fury, it's allowed, even encouraged. But it's watched too. One sister always stays grounded, ready to pull her back. They don't fear the berserk state, they respect it and control it. Dr. Sigrid Thorson stands before a projected image of shield maidens mid-formation. Their identity-fused self and sisterhood courage was a shared resource. She gestures to diagrams of interlocking support behaviors, hand signals, shield syncs, trust loops. Bravery was distributed, not an individual trait, but an ecosystem. In a tribe where every life mattered, bravery was communal and maintained through ritual bonds and repeated oaths. Rituals weren't just emotional, they were neurological. They rewired fear into belonging, pressure into performance. To stand alone was dangerous. To stand together was survival. By firelight, apprentices sit cross-legged, repeating sagas. One girl speaks of Herva, another, a third, recites a death chant learned from her grandmother. Myths weren't escapism, they were rehearsal. Remembering those who stood forged, new courage for those next in line. The older shield maidens nod, not correcting, but affirming. These stories aren't distant. They're instructions. They offer models of fear faced, loyalty proven, and endings earned. Memory is their master. Each name passed down is a map to bravery. Fear isn't erased, it's narrated. It's recontextualized as part of strength. The fire has burned low. Embers glow between the shield maidens, seated shoulder to shoulder. No one speaks now. They don't need to. A final shield is set down. A braid retied, a hand gripped in silent understanding. Their greatest weapon wasn't T-sword or shield, but the unbreakable bond of women who fought and died together. Their faces are tired, their breaths slow, but nothing has broken them. Even in stillness, they're a wall. Legacy doesn't scream. It sits, breathing, beside you, ready. Whether in battle, bath, or burial, their identity was never solitary. It was shared, and in that shared fire, they became immortal. In the depths of a cave, lit only by torchlight, 6 shield maidens enter in silence. Their faces are marked with charcoal runes. Their weapons laid carefully in a 5-point pattern, 1 blade for each sister, one in the center, gleaming in firelight. Brynhild stands at the core, her palm open to the rising flame, whispering a chant carried from grandmothers long buried. Each woman touches blade to ground. Each vow passes from breath to steel. Here, beneath the earth, oaths aren't spoken, they're forged. This isn't a ceremony for glory. It's a pact of endurance, defiance, and shared death if needed. In this chamber, silence is sacred. Eyes meet and say what mouths cannot. Moonlight spills across the forest edge. In shadow, the shield maidens strike. Blunted swords hiss through fog. There's no trainer yelling, no timing, but only breath and instinct. One woman falters her swing wide, exposed. Her partner resets, offers no correction. The rhythm begins again. This is not performance, it's preparation. Each bruise a lesson. Each breath held in silence. Their minds learn to see without light, react before thought. In dusk, hesitation means failure. They drill as if tomorrow will demand it. Because it will. Gudrun crouches over a firestone kettle. She stirs slowly. Crushed juniper, bitter bog myrtle, a sliver of fly agaric, the dosage exact. She hums to herself, fingers steady. She adds wemblossom petals soaked in fermented water. The brew darkens. This is wolf's breath, taken in silence before sunrise. It won't dull pain, but it will stretch the edge, stamina wrapped in warmth, awareness turned electric. These aren't potions of myth, they're tools. Measured, earned, trusted. Her sisters wait without impatience. One by one, they drink. Braids are more than hair. Brynhild threads a bead etched with the rune for courage into Salveig's strand. Salveig closes her eyes, breathes once, then weaves it through. Each woman chooses her bead. Some wear strength, others bind vengeance. A few remembrance. The knots are tight, near the scalp, not for beauty, for binding. Each twist a vow. Each braid a mark that says, I am watched by the unseen, and I will not break. In battle, the braid whispers what the blade cannot. The drums start soft, just breath against hide. Then rhythm, growing, a heartbeat of wood and skin. Shield maidens circle, they inhale together. One starts, a chant, half melody, half war cry. Voices layer, drums rise, breath matches beat, feet step in time. The body synchronizes with the sound until there is no distinction between individual and group. This isn't noise, it's calibration, readiness, chemistry without fire. They chant not to impress, but to reset. Fear drains out, rhythm takes hold. No orders needed, just the beat, just the breath, just the war to come. Elixir taken, limbs loosen. Brynhild signals with her hand, slow arcs with wooden blades begin. Sword swings aren't sharp or fast. They're precise, deliberate. Each motion designed to harden tendon, to stretch without snap. It's yoga wrapped in armor. Stretching with intention, repetition etched into muscle. They aren't chasing sweat, they're sensing physiology and psychology. Plants fuel the body. Ritual fuels the mind. Swordwork ties it all together. Even a tendon knows when it's loved. Torches are extinguished. The cavern breathes smoke and silence. The Shieldmaidens ascend from shadow. As they step out under the stars, their breath becomes visible again, like spirits escaping. Armor glints under starlight. Braids sway with rhythm. Eyes are wide but steady. What was ritual has become readiness. Each one touches her braid before lifting her shield. What they practiced is now embedded. Thoughtless, natural part of them. Brynhild surveys the sea. Salvig grips her hilt. Kara ties her final knot. They are not guessing what's coming. They are ready to meet it. Dawn cracks. The air shimmers gold and blue. On the ridge, the Shieldmaidens stand in formation, swords raised, braids catching light. They are silent, but not still. Each one wears the night's before, etched into bead, braid, breath. Gudrun steps forward, lays a small satchel of herbs at the foot of a standing stone. Their rituals aren't superstition, they are systems. Systems of strength, of survival, of unity. Experts say their herbal mastery rivaled monks, that their rituals encoded fight-or-flight control. But no lab can measure what this bond did. They didn't just train for battle. They became battle. The ceremony is over, but its residue lives in bone and braid. What they whispered in torchlight, they now carry into daylight. Ready, whole, together, under floodlights. A modern special ops team scales rope walls, crawls beneath barbed wire, and sprints through sandbags. A clock ticks in the background. Breath clouds in the cold. Cut to Viking shores. Shieldmaidens drag round shields through sludge. Axes slam into frozen tree trunks. Torches cast long shadows across the ice-backed drill field. Today's elite units train in engineered chaos with foam mats and medical staff nearby. Shieldmaidens trained in raw uncertainty, no nets to catch the injured. Just grit and the memory of who didn't make it last season. They bled in the snow and learned in the cold. Reflex wasn't theory, was instinct or death. 3 soldiers line up in a sterile ops room. One takes a capsule, another mixes powder into water. Each nods silently. Supplements logged. Timing tracked. Far back in time, Gudrun passes a wooden cup to a waiting warrior. A bitter brew of juniper, myrtle, and mushroom mist rises. The warrior drinks deeply. In both cases, performance is enhanced. But one is sanctioned by science, the other steeped in sacred mystery. Fly agaric wasn't recreation. It honed edge. It dulled fear. It let them walk into death with their eyes wide open. Same principle, different century. When the mission matters, even the rules bend. A modern squad links arms, breathing in sync before a night raid. Their bond forged over months of joint hardship, unspoken and tight. Now, Shieldmaidens press rune beads into one another's palms. Each bead bears a story of a sister lost, an oath kept. They braid them in, knot by knot. Elite teams build trust through pain shared. Shieldmaidens did the same, but their trust was thick with blood, screams, and the silence after a friend's final breath. There's no difference, only evolution. Camaraderie lives in the gaps between trauma and triumph. They carried each other in past lives, and now, debriefing under fluorescent light, maps spread, feedback delivered. A wellness officer checks in. Breathing slows, notes are filed. In the bath hall, Shieldmaidens step into steam. They breathe herbs and oil, their bodies marked by battle. But in this place, the heat pulls the pain loose. Voices rise in low chants. Someone invokes the Valkyrie to watch over the fallen. Recovery isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's the reclaiming of self after giving everything. Where one side logs metrics, the other logs memory. Both reset, but only one leaves with her hair braided in sacred runes. Footage from Viking drills plays beside graphs on modern tactical readiness. Lt. Col. Clark speaks evenly. Modern units bind through shared ritual and hardship. These women were doing it before written doctrine existed. Dr. Reed adds, they had an integrated system: physical training, herbal pharmacology, psychological resilience. Their bath halls were performance labs. Their chancemental training, we see ancient brews beside modern meal prep boxes. Sword drills beside timed reps. Nothing has changed, only the tools. The blueprint was there, etched in bone, fire, and sisterhood. A military ceremony. Young recruits recite the creed, raise swords, tap steel against badges. Cut back, in the long hall haze, shieldmaidens tie sacred knots, speaking names of ancestors aloud. Modern ethos sounds different, but its soul is old. It's there in the collective rhythm, the oath, the nod of agreement when words fail. A soldier taps her braid before boarding a plane. Another fastens a ring once worn in battle. Each gesture echoes something ancient. From smoke to structure, shieldmaidens whisper through the fabric of every unit that fights as one. A special ops team walks into golden light, backs straight, gear slung. Their silence holds purpose. In a parallel shot, a young reenactor stands alone at dawn, hair braided, blade upright in soil. These are not fairy tales, they're templates. What shieldmaidens knew, science now confirms. Herbal focus, aids, biomechanical readiness, trauma bonding rituals, they did it first. Their science wasn't in labs, it was in bodies, breath, and bone. And in every elite unit today, a spark of them survives. Not as myth, but as method, as origin, as the first code of what it means to fight as one, bleed as one, rise as one. Dawn breaks over the edge of the silent battlefield. A lone shield stands rooted in the earth, its rim weathered, its braided tokens still swaying in the breeze. The land is still, but the memory hums beneath the soil. Solveig steps forward, her sword, once swung in fury, now lowered with grace. She plants it blade down beside the shield. Around her, her sisters' arms nod silently. One by one, they step back, turn, and walk, a waving behind not surrender, but sanctity. At a distant military base, a modern special ops operator completes her watch. She removes her helmet, sets down her gear, and pauses before the unit's flag. No words, just a small, sharp gesture of respect. To warriors across time, bonded in ritual and resolve. They stood where few dared, faced the sharp edge of fear, endured the tearing weight of loss. And in doing so, they built something no enemy could burn: legacy. Life as a shieldmaiden was agony and ecstasy, ritual and reality, myth and mastery. A world of blood, song, and sisterhood, woven into a code of honor that still resonates. What would happen if we lived like them? Trained our minds like they trained their hands. Trusted each other like they trusted their oaths. Their legacy asks not for worship but for imitation. Carry their oath in your own battles. Let ritual center you. Let sisterhood catch you. Let resolve carry you. And when your own sword grows heavy, remember, there's never dropped. Final image, a close-up of a sword hilt tied with a single braid, catching the first blaze of sun. It shines not with magic, but with memory. The promise holds. The vow endures.